curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious.
Conversation.
Curious.
Conversation.
Nowadays, there are still girls.
So, hello everyone. We're here for another episode of Curious Conversations, and today I have Dex Parker, Shane, I don't know your last name, but let's just say Shane or Sparks, and we have Wendy. So today we're going to be talking about the adult and sex industry and looking at, one, why there's so much stigma and tabooness in these areas, and two, just to explore the areas and find, I've reached out to these three people because I really appreciate what they're doing and how they're, to me, revolutionizing the stereotypes of the adult industry. And I just want to unpack with them and get a bit of knowledge for myself and share with anyone listening what this industry is actually like if you hold a strong point of integrity and spirituality and using it as a personal development tool, not only to express your sex. So I'd like to start off with Wendy, because you are who I've connected with first. Wendy, would you like to share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. And second of all, I like your chain.
Bunnings finest.
Yes. No, looks good, effective. So what I do, I am a stripper in strip club predominantly. So I've done that probably coming on to about 11 years now. And I always wanted to do that. I didn't always do that. First, I studied science. Actually, I did biotechnology. And nowadays, having stripped for so long, I kind of diversify just to keep my own life interesting. And I love learning. So now I also offer training and coaching for the industry. I've dug really deep down the rabbit hole of like basically every aspect I can think of that can sort of help different women in the industry in different ways, supporting like not just the sales side of it, making more money, but also promoting like confidence, boosting self-worth, and all of those things that I find interesting. And then entertainment-wise, I also do privates. So that's in people's homes. And that's like waitressing. So that's topless and nude waitressing. And again, it's just a different branch of the industry. So yeah, I love that there's so many branches. There's something for everyone if you're into it.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to, as we go along, talk about these offerings that you give to women that are new to the industry, because I find that so important. I know I obviously have a little bit of an insight to what you're doing, so I want to unpack that soon. Shane, would you like to share who you are and what you're doing in the industry?
Yeah, so I'm Shane, or Sparks as some people refer to me. I basically practice Shibari, which is Japanese rope bondage. It stems obviously from Japan, and it's quite an in-depth and intricate thing. I don't know, it's got so many different levels of it. Obviously stemming back to where it came from, it sort of come from the samurai period as an actual martial art, and then has been developed through and used in sexual practices and heavily in BDSM. Therefore, a lot of the familiarities, and it sits really right in the middle of the BDSM scene. It's quite a risky edge play. Essentially, I've been practicing that for about 5 years now, learning everywhere all around Australia, and then recently just went to Japan and studied in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach at a place called Shibari Adelaide here in Adelaide, both group classes and privates, and then tying that stuff and stuff like that. I tie probably 5 to 6 times a week for about 2 to 3 hours. So it's real regular and constantly trying to develop skills and that in practice. Yeah, so that's me.
Cool. Yeah, that's something I've been wondering about Shibari, and I want to again unpack soon around that, where it and what you know around where it went from like a martial art to something in the sex industry and BDSM, because I'm curious to see where those two cross over, and if there's like dogmas on either side, and we'll unpack that soon.
Funny when Wendy mentioned about your chain and the padlock, so that has a whole different meaning in the BDSM scene.
Yeah, I recently learnt on a date. It went a whole lot different than what I was expecting very recently. Dex, could you please share with me and us what it is you do and who you are?
Yes. First, thank you for having me on. It's a great pleasure to speak on these things. So I'm pretty new to the industry. I began my career, if you will, November of last year. First I was doing some nude modeling with the intention of being more comfortable naked in my body. And one of the photographers suggested that I start an OnlyFans, so I did. And the first month went like fairly well. But after that, I kind of had a conversation with myself, like, what do I really want to bring forward in the industry? Like, how do I want to step up? And what is it that I'm actually doing with myself? Like having those conversations. And what spoke really true to me was bringing forward content that I wasn't seeing in the industry, like something that was of a higher vibrational quality, something that spoke to a holistic approach to sexuality. So a lot of what I create now is both a demonstration, somewhat educational and for viewing pleasure, a lot of solo content that is like what I call like erotic self-play or erotic massage, tying in aspects of breath work. And I also collaborate with other sex workers, both like male or female, transgender and non-binary. And I've done some like traditional studio work, but right now, like my vision or my mission in this work is really to allow people to see that sexuality and spirituality don't have to be mutually exclusive, and that you can tap into more emotional and spiritual states through what right now seems to be a very physical thing. What we label as sex is very physical. So, yeah.
First of all, that sound quality is a zillion times better. Thank you. And yeah, there's something fascinating in there that I heard you say, especially just because of the conversations I have on here recently, is using like studio as like a more of a traditional practice, and that the tradition starts in studios. It feels so opposite, but I'm excited to hear, I guess, the differences in this holistic approach that you are doing, and then going into the more traditional industry of sex workers, and actually what it's like bringing that energy in. And I maybe I'll start there, because once upon a time, a few years ago, I was hit up to do some porn, and it was by a studio. And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do that. And then I checked it out, and I hated it. I just hated like the aesthetic. Actually, it was like, it just felt so sterile, however you say it. And I was like, hey, look, and I like pitched something, and it was like, nope. And so it was a no for me. I'm curious to hear from you, taking this holistic approach and then going into a studio. How are you keeping in that like holistic sense when maybe things are playing out a bit more traditionally in that area?
It's a great question. I mean, right now there's a lot of barriers in regards to actually making it come to life when the filming is going on or the setting. But for me, I know I can control my state, or the people who I work with. So one of the practices is building rapport. So I don't work with people unless I have a chance to actually connect with them or have formed some sort of lines of communication. Because I feel like that for me, like when it comes to intimacy, touching or penetration, if you will, is just like, that's not the whole picture. It's like the conversation, it's the actual energy that I'm exchanging with someone. So right now, that's like really the thing that I have control over when it comes to studio work. But fortunately, I like the studio that I've done some work for. I'm very connected with the producer, and we're on like a good conversive level. So I leverage that as well, like getting closer to the people and the businesses or the brands that I associate with, in order to understand like what their morals are, what their ethos are, so that there's capacity to be more vulnerable or step out and with like courageous suggestions. But right now, I think it's just upholding my own standards and being a model of like I'm not just going to do something for money. I want to do, like, if I make $1,000 doing a job and I felt terrible afterwards, it's much different than if I made that $1,000 feeling energized and lifted after the process, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I got sorry, let me just jump in. I got a question there. You touched on intimacy and that kind of stuff, like being able to control and talking and knowing the partners that you're working with. Do you find that it's like it's an arranged thing, an arranged meeting? Does that impact at all the intimacy and that you feel with a person, even if you get along on like a friendship level? The fact that it's a pre-negotiated and arranged spot, all right, we're going to do this and there's cameras, how does that like affect the intimacy level of the stuff that you do?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it's kind of different because when I stepped into doing this work, like COVID hit, and then there was all these barriers, and then a lot of things in the industry changed. So I've been fortunate in that a lot of my work I've been able to film on my own and then choose my performers. So I haven't really been exposed to that per se, where it's like, this is who you're going to work with. This is the setting. You have no control over that. So with that in mind, you know, like now that I've had this experience, I've been, you know, privileged with this experience. I'm not sure if I will allow myself to step into such uncertainty or not, you know, be able to form such connection, because I believe that's usually what happens. It's like, you're going to work with this person. This is the scene. This is, you know, the poses or the positions we want, you know, boom, 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 let's get it done. But I would rather say no and stand up as a model for that, so that other people are like, you know what, he's doing that. Maybe I should too. Maybe I should step up for what I believe in instead of going for the money, you know?
I just want to also jump in there because if that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So what stood out to me when you were first speaking, how you said, I love how you said, you know, you sat down and had a conversation with yourself. And just that connecting in with yourself and going, okay, you know, where do I want this to go? What feels good for me? Particularly in the OnlyFans platform, where you are, in a sense, catering for other people, but and you know, the exchange of money. And I love how you said, you know, you're really keeping it to what feels authentic and true to you. And then saying, you know, when it comes out of COVID and it might change, I feel like, you know, you, like if you stick with that sense, those conversations that you're having with yourself, so I don't know that you know, then you will really be able to guide that and set your boundaries, and then, like you said, set that example for other people to say, hey, he's able to do that and he's still making success. And in my belief, you will actually potentially reach more success by sticking to that, you know, for sure.
Really, if I just add one comment to that, I really appreciate that, Wendy, because one of the things, I wouldn't label myself as a coach. Like, maybe someday I'd love to guide people, but one of the things, you know, people ask about OnlyFans or like, how do you grow it, this and that. And what you just said there, it's so true. It's like asking ourselves, what brings me life when I create? What excites me about my work? As opposed to, like, when I first started, I was like, what should I create for the audience? And that can be really soul sucking, and you can just, you know, feel as though like you're not getting anything out of your work. And now it's like, I create for myself. It's a means of expression versus validation. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I want to acknowledge Wendy in that, because this is a big thing you're trying to, or you're not trying, you are doing with your work, is to go, hey, like, I can set an example of how things can be different, just like Dex is doing, is like holding that point of integrity, going, hey, like, I'm not budging. I like that idea. Like, my little devil's advocate there wanted to straight away ask Dex, like, well, how big does a bag have to be to you know, go out of integrity? But I don't want to ask that. But like, yeah, Wendy, I want to hear about your journey with being so embedded in the clubs and what happens inside the clubs to going like, no, I want change now.
Okay. I think just a natural unfolding of my journey. When I first started stripping, I was very detached from myself. And I really lived day to day. I actually never thought ahead. I didn't have a relationship with myself. I didn't really know what I was doing. And slowly through time, I started investing the money that I made from stripping into personal development. Just, you know, the odd person around me, my brother first suggested, hey, why don't you see someone? And it sort of began.
Thanks, bro.
You kind of, yeah, exactly. You kind of, you know, if someone's suggesting that, you kind of take that on board. And then that started unfolding into a whole journey of self-discovery. And so it's so weird. Like, I literally came from not having much of a memory and things like that, you know, and like I said, living day to day. So the club was I didn't feel in control. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I was just, every night was luck based, you know, oh, that was lucky and this is lucky. And slowly through time and my experience and then developing a connection to myself, I started realizing, hang on a second, I can become more in control of this. And now I'm 36. I've just recently turned 36. And, you know, it is a high turnover industry. And I can see a lot of, you know, new strippers entering, or strippers that may have done it for a while and you know, whatever. There's a whole different range of scenarios, lost their spark, or, you know, had shit situations in their personal life and things like that. It can all impact, you know, every area of life kind of impacts. And so I guess just in my journey, seeing that the more I connected to myself, the more that I just worked on myself and just believed in myself and increased my self-worth and got on top of staying in control of, you know, interactions with customers, because there is a bit of energy, there is energy exchange, and there can be a bit of power play as well, even in a strip club, because it's such a fantasy world. So, you know, really staying grounded and realizing, you know, I'm creating the fantasy. You know, sometimes customers like to take that role and say, hey, I'm a fan, you know, and really just staying grounded and saying, no, actually, you know, this is how it is, and just navigating the club, and then realizing as well, like, the more that you connect with yourself, the more that you stay grounded, the more that you stay in control of your interactions, and you know, it spills over into the more income you can make, the more job satisfaction, because like Dex mentioned, you're not going home feeling like, you know, any level of like, oh, I mean, it happens time to time and everything's learning, but, you know, really sort of eliminating as many situations as possible where you feel like, oh, that person, you know, annoyed me, or that person triggered me, or that person, you know, whatever, like sapped my energy, or, you know, took advantage in whatever way they could. But club is quite protected because there's bouncers and there's cameras everywhere and things like that. But still, psychologically, people can take advantage of you as well. So just protecting all of that. So I hope that answered, because I can't actually remember the original question.
That's okay. We're just talking. And I like that, like hearing your journey started from quite a disconnected place, and you found empowerment through going into this journey, where Dexter's came in and he's had a conversation with himself of being like, what is it that I want to achieve out of this, and what is it I want to put out to the world? Yeah. So I'm curious of you, Sparks, is like, where did you come into your journey from? And especially with Shibari and like ropes, you know, Dex talking about like the intimacy is so important and how that is portrayed in his work. Like, seeing people do ropes is one of the most intimate things I've ever seen. I've been at like temple nights and like sex parties, and watching it is like, I'll be in some kind of interaction, someone pulls out the ropes, I'm like, like, oh my God, this is so hot. And I've shown a few people your Instagram feed saying, hey, I'm going to chat to this guy on Friday. And especially the girls are like, whoa, like this is hot, because you see just in your photos alone, just like the intimacy and the level of like, I am here, I'm holding you, I'm with you. So I'm curious to know where that journey started, where you could just dive into that intimacy.
Yeah, so I mean, it starts with a little bit of a romance, I guess. It's the story from the start of it. I met a girl at a time, we were just doing a fun thing. It was a casual arrangement. We were at a party, saw someone do rope, and went, that looks pretty cool. Let's find somewhere where we can do that. She found a place in Adelaide, then where we could start learning. We started taking lessons. We'd only known each other about 3-4 weeks by then. It was still just this is just going to be a casual arrangement, won't last long. And then, just kept going, and there was the like you mentioned, the intimacy and trust and respect and all that kind of stuff that we built together, learning that together at the time. That was early 2015. Went from there, we kept learning, and essentially now we're married, and I'm sitting in our house that we built together. So it's just it brought and has kept us together, and that's the kind of connection that you can build from it. And like I'm a firm believer for relationships and that kind of stuff. It's just 100%. It's fantastic for mutual respect, your trust, your communication. Like both of us were never really good at communicating properly, like communicating feelings, how we're feeling, being open to talking to each other, and learning how to listen as well. Like it's just all translates so much through Shibari and through rope, because particularly when you start doing stuff in the air, suspension wise, I need to be able to take criticism and take what she says fully on board and not have any angst or anything like that between it, and completely learn to not take it personally and go, okay, we need to do this, make this different, change this. And it's just, that just translates through to your whole relationship. And it's fantastic. So that's sort of where we started and built from there.
That makes me so fucking happy to hear that. And just, again, like just having to talk to destigmatize this, to hear the like, actually that's what put your relationship together and brought that like actual super closeness and ability to communicate feelings. That is
a huge
it's
one. 100%. And like it's brought us to the point now where we don't tie much together that more couple of things happened, like she's had a bit of a hip injury and that kind of thing. So we don't do it as much together, but we've built such a strong foundation through rope to start with each other that now we'll just message and I'll say, I'm tying X tonight, and to go, so so-and-so is coming over to ours and we're doing rope, and like, so we go off and tie with other people and that kind of thing. And it's really quite a beautiful thing just to be completely accepting and just like, yep, cool, it's a fun thing, go have fun, still quite intimate, but you completely trust everything that's happening. And just have that baseline, that solid foundation that's built on it all underlying there to begin with.
Yeah. All right. Maybe I'll take my next date on a Shibari.
Do it. Yes. Be one hell of a first date.
Deal. All right.
I'm gonna do it. Hold on to
it.
Dex, maybe we can go on a virtual date, and Shane can facilitate.
Yeah, virtual Shibari date. I'm down. Let's do it.
I don't know how that'll work, but it's 2020 and COVID's a thing, so we just have to figure it out.
Gonna get inventive, right?
Well, yeah, I guess I want to flip back to you then, Wendy, and I guess a big stereotype I would see with strippers is like embodying the slut archetype, which I fully champion. But with you, I've obviously not seen you in your work. I've seen you portray it a bit on your Instagram, but I also know you outside of your Instagram, and you're quite like a masculine, somewhat like just one of the boys kind of vibe, where you live quite a casual life, and that doesn't really come outside in your personality. And if you think of one of the biggest stars in the world right now is Cardi B, and she's incredible, but a big part of her personality is coming out of the strip club, and she still runs that slut archetype outside in her actual work and in her day-to-day life and on her Instagram. I'm curious to hear your relationship with slut archetype and slut energy, and where that is in your work, and also where that is in just your day-to-day life.
Yeah, so okay, there's a lot there. And this is new to me, working with you. You've actually helped me to integrate the two sides to me, basically, because stripping and this slut energy has always come naturally to me. It's been there, you know, but in my everyday life, yeah, I do run quite a masculine energy. And I grew up with 4 brothers. I have no sisters. And, you know, I played soccer. I was an extreme tomboy at school. And I'm comfortable in both. And they both want what's best for me. I've just kept them really separate. And I was aware of that. But I wasn't aware that actually repressing certain parts of myself in certain times of my life has, in a sense, held me back. And like you mentioned with Cardi B, you know, she's sort of like full-time in that and highly successful. Again, I think maybe the environment, like I live in Perth. I think she's in LA perhaps. The surroundings, you know, I do feel like for example, when I fly to Melbourne to work, pre-COVID, I was doing that for the last 3 years. I feel like I would, just being in the bigger city and it's a bit more fashionable, and I would actually enjoy dressing up, going out, whereas here it's very beach vibe and I enjoy not dressing up at all. Small, you know, and I've potentially danced for like a massive portion of Perth as well. So like, I don't know, part of me doesn't feel the need to express that all the time, but starting to be aware that, okay, in certain times I'm repressing one part and in other times I'm repressing the other part. I'm realizing that and then working towards bringing them together, I'm feeling a lot happier. I'm feeling like like I said, I like to connect to myself and I have a really strong relationship with myself, but I'm beginning to feel even more myself. And I look forward to journeying down that even more, down that path. And like Dex said, again, I'm going to refer back to that, the conversation with the self. You know, I like to meditate, and I just got this like intuitive sort of, you need to explore your feminine more. And this year's been a bit about that, and it's just been little steps, but just feeling that and then following that, it has changed a lot for me. And in fact, in my relationship, you know, my partner, he's a really lovely, gentle kind of guy and probably a little bit in his feminine. And so part of me, you know, I love that about him, but part of me also that could potentially, you know, maybe I judged it a bit, not being aware of what was going on. And there's, you know, such like intricate balances. And so the more that I've like stepped into my feminine and also brought the slut out of the closet, I guess you could say, it's allowed us to become closer. It's allowed him to express his masculinity more. And it's just created a really good dynamic, like in all areas of life. And then it's even added another depth in my work that I wasn't aware of. I recently did a silent retreat where, you know, I was really focusing on, you know, yin and yang and how does that fit in the strip club. And, you know, yes, rapport is really important. And then there's mirroring and things like that to, you know, allow your customer to develop trust and a connection, you know, and feel comfortable with you, feeling that commonality and stuff. But then on the flip side, there's this whole other element that I'm investigating into, just like contemplating with the yin and the yang, and how important it is to bring the femininity to the table in the strip club, because that then allows the customer to bring out their masculinity, which is what you kind of want, because there's that protection, looking after you. And as a dancer, creating that container, you do want them to relate to you, but you also don't want to buck heads. And you do want them to go, oh, I'll take care of you, you know, obviously monetarily and being polite and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and I love just, you know, I always look at things as through a filter of how does this relate to me as a stripper. And so I'm new to these archetypal, you know,
expressions. Yeah,
thank you. But it's been like, I feel like I've just stepped my foot in the door, and I'm interested in. So yeah, it's
wonderful. Yeah, it's just fascinating that it's sort of the other way around for you. You know, it's like I'm just stepping into my slot now, and I've been a stripper for X amount of years.
It's so fun.
I love it. Dex, a podcast that's dropped today. I talked with a bunch of sexuality leaders who are like sexuality coaches, and we were talking about, especially for men in those roles, taking advantage of that role when a lot of, especially women, are attracted to sexuality leaders. I've been in that position, and it's quite easy to take advantage of that role that you are and to lure people in. I'm curious to hear how it is with you, expressing yourself and having quite sexually overt content coming out, and what happens on your social media platform, who starts sliding up in your DMs, how you're conducting that energy and that communication. What is it like stepping into this role, and becoming a leader in that area? How are you navigating that?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me personally, I guess I'll speak on like coming out with these things or being open about them. And it's always been like, I've always just been, I guess, a natural performer and someone who likes to speak my mind. So it's never been like an uncomfortable thing for me. But I guess where it really came from was I had ashamed myself and my sexuality and my desires to like experience group experiences or explore my pansexuality or bisexuality. And from that shaming, and growing out of it, I didn't want other people, or wanted to help or maybe prevent other people from coming to those places, because I, hurt myself and other people because of lying and the shame. So I thought, if I were to bring these things to light and be open about them, perhaps other people could relate and think, yeah, like I struggle with that as well, especially as men, like being open about their sexuality or curious about things, sexual things, that it might help them to, normalize. But in regards to like conversation, I get a lot of both men and women reaching out. Oftentimes it's quite positive, like people enjoy what I'm writing, because it's usually like a bit of a memoir, but also something like empowering and speaking on things that are deeper than the surface level, about the energetics of sex, or what can be learned and expand upon when you're willing to have or be vulnerable with yourself. But I do get people just sliding in the DMs asking for photos or whatever, or a dick pic here and there. And I used to spend energy like conversing with those people, but usually it's just like, if they're not going to put the energy to communicate with me clearly, then I will not really give that back. But a lot of times it's actually quite positive and empowering. Like people have shared that, what I share helps them to be more open, or that they're now more curious, or they didn't even realize that they could, step into themselves in that way. So it's actually been a very cool and empowering experience.
What happens if someone that you find attractive slides up in your DM? What are you doing?
Yes, good question. I mean, that happens too. Like there's definitely a lot of people who are like, hey, I want to work with you, or do you want to work with me? And right now that's actually a process. Like initially, like I was like, oh yeah, I want to work, let's work with people. But there's like, I want to spend time, again, like I said, getting to know people, and the way that the time and intention someone puts into conversing with me says a lot. Like they're willing to say, like, this is where I'm coming from, this is what I enjoy creating, like, and then also giving me the platform to speak on those things as well. That says a lot about where they're coming from and the work they've done in their life, as opposed to, hey, you're attractive, I think you're hot, let's make some pornography, or like let's collab. It's of lesser interest and doesn't attract me as much. So I almost have like these hoops, if you will, to make people jump through. Like if you're willing to go through the tests and actually like sit in and create something that is a real connection, then we can work together or something like that. But and then I don't know, it's I don't want to cross a lot of the barriers too. Like if someone reaches out to me and I find them attractive, like maybe we'll have that conversation, but yeah, things can get a little bit blurry. I wonder what, I would actually love to hear what Wendy and Sparks had to say about this, like being in this industry of sexuality and sex. Like I'm sure people reach out with those things all the time. You both have partners. I'm not sure if it's open relationships, but what have both of your experiences with this?
Great question.
I mean, I've had a number of people just send messages that, hey, would you like to tie? Would you be interested in tying me? Such. Most of the time, I mean, a lot of them are genuinely, they want to make contact and get in touch with someone that they instantly trust, instantly see that they don't have to worry as much about safety and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different in my regards, I guess, as it would be probably to yourself and Wendy's situation. Most people are reaching out to me because they see sort of the skills and that kind of stuff there, so they can have the experience to its, like, as best as what they can, rather than having to put in months and months and years of time. So it does take a lot of time to learn the skill of Shibari. And then, so most of the people who contact me are genuinely wanting to experience. You do get the odd couple who go, the odd 1 or 2 messages here and there that just like, just pop up. Hey, I'd really love you to absolutely dominate me in your ropes and leave me a withering mess. And those kind of ones you just ignore. They're easy to ignore because essentially what do you do with it? You're not going to go, oh, thanks heaps for the offer, but no thanks. Well, that's about as well. They're not, and I'm not interested in that kind of play either. Like you said, I'm in a relationship. As far as me and Emerald are concerned, I tie other girls. I tie 2 models regularly, and then every now and again I'll tie another person. It's not an often. I try not to make it an often thing. I was doing a bit of like paid tying for a while. I found that I tied 3 different girls and then my 2 regular models in the 1 week, and it just, the energy that took for me to give to something to someone, because Shibari is massive energy transference. It's like all about energy, and if you're giving all your energy to someone and not getting anything back, it's really draining. And I found at the end of that week I had to make a call for my own sort of health, and because I sat there, I was like, I can't do it. I just feel flat. I feel drained, like my pouring from an empty cup by the end of the week, and there was just no more energy there left to give. I kind of made that conscious decision to go, I'm not going to tie people for money. I'm happy to teach people to tie each other. Like, absolutely love teaching people to tie privately, but I kind of made the decision that I'm not going to tie people for money. At least at this stage, because just doing it that much is not. I just didn't want to do it. So I mean, I kind of say that when people say, "Hey, do you want to tie together? Like, can you tie me? I know you do private lessons, but would you tie me in a private lesson?" And so I kind of look. Sorry, I had to make the hard decision that I need to give priority to the 2 people who put full-time energy and commitment into being there for me when I need. So I kind of tie them and use my energy with those people, because it's a 2-way street. They give energy back, so don't feel like I'm walking out of it at a loss type thing. That's sort of how I deal with it when I get people messaging me asking to tie and everything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. I love that, even though we're in different, branches of the sex industry, that we all feel that energy exchange, and there's the exchange of whatever our service is for money, but then there's also that other level of like exchanging our energy, even if it's for money, where it still doesn't feel right, and to be in tune with that. And I love how you said you feel like you're pouring from an empty cup. The work that we do, especially when it's from the heart, it's actually really hard work. Before, Paisley, when you're asking about, I guess how strippers are viewed, and some people, you often hear like flippant comments like, oh, you don't do anything for, your money, you just get your tits out and whatever. Yeah, sometimes it is that easy, but at the end of the day, you know, the hours are difficult, you know, the energy exchange is difficult. And then back to the original question with what, you know, the DM sliding in. I mean, my Instagram is very focused on a stripper audience because I want my message to serve my community. I do have a really heavily neglected stripper Instagram where I post a photo where I can be in contact with good customers. And then people slide in. But I think there's a real like stripper mindset and especially feeling that how draining it can be just communicating with people and everyone wants something and they want more and more, you know, that saying like, you know, you give an inch and they take a mile and whinge, and it's like, you know, so basically my first answer was just be like, send me money. And if they want to do that, then good. And then I might be open to communicating. And that pretty much just is a really good way to sort through people that just want your energy for nothing, or they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, and then you can turn around and say, okay. So that's something that I find, like, especially in the stripping industry, that, you know, and it can warp your mind a little bit, but yeah, to get quite ruthless with like, you want my time, you have to pay, like, be definitely the first response.
Well, it's something so fascinating, especially in a sex industry, but like just any fucking industry is like, yes, money is a form of energy transference. Like, you know, you pay a plumber to fucking clean your pipes for money. That's it. The energy he puts into your pipes, you fucking give him money for it, or her money for it. Like, it's no different with a stripper, with anyone. Just for instance, like Spark says, like, that's not what he wants to do. So that's just not what he wants to do. He wants energy in a different way. But yeah, it's so important to highlight is like, yes, money is a yeah, I think it ties into sex a little bit. So as that was a group question of sliding into DMs, another group question I want to ask is, your family, do they know what you do for work, and what do they think, if they do know? And if they don't, why don't they know?
Yes, I'll start off. Yeah, we didn't tell my family for a couple of years, probably about a year and a half, 2 years. And then we did. It kind of got to the point where it was such a big part of our life that we couldn't hide it. Like, our bedroom's got a suspension point through the ceiling. We've got timber frame work around the bedroom with, cross beams and stuff, specifically to do it, so we can have people over to teach and everything like that. And then signing leases to rent place in the city so I can teach group classes and that kind of stuff, from running a studio. Like, you can't just all of a sudden make that and you're like, oh, we've got a family dinner on Saturday, do you want to come over? And I go, no, I can't, because I can't tell you why. So yeah, got to the point where we had to tell our family. They know it. Funny thing is, when I was explaining it to my dad, actually, I was trying to do it all nice and easy into it. Like, it's really communicative, really artistic, so aesthetically pleasing. It's basically an art form and really spiritual, which it all is, but I was really embellishing those points. And he let me talk for a couple of minutes, and he goes, no, I know what that is. I've seen it before. And I was like, oh, yeah, thanks for that. And he's like, yeah, I've been to a few parties where I've seen some people do that kind of stuff. And it's like, all right. And then there was this whole other side of him that I started to learn about, and it's like, oh, so you act to it. Yeah, not the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as it turns out. So it wasn't, in the end, it didn't really need to explain much to him at all. I just had to tell him, hey, we do this, and he was like, yep, cool, and that was about it. And then Mum's, she's really straight and narrow, but also open and accepting at the same time. I mean, she was a little bit gentler with the easing into explaining it to her, but she's accepting of it. She didn't like, it took a little bit for her to get used to with her friends and that kind of stuff, finding out. It's still not something that she openly talks about to all her friends. They know pretty much because they've normally have stumbled across my Instagram one way or Facebook one way or another. But to be honest, when I do, those that do bring it up are genuinely surprised and shocked and love it and admire it.
Wonderful.
And I guess those that have a problem with it don't say anything. So it's fine. Works for me.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Go for it, Wendy.
Okay, thanks. So my family, it took me 5 years to tell my family. I think I started with my brothers, and then parents were a little more difficult. My dad is an interesting man. He lived in Switzerland most of my life. And I didn't know, I just couldn't predict how they would react, like, at all. But I have a firm belief that the people that raise us, we're like a combination of them in one way, shape or form, you know, their beliefs, whatever their like influence. And actually I think that, you know, if a parent has a problem with something their child does, perhaps maybe they need to look at themselves as well. So, you know, with that in mind, I thought, okay, they raised me, there's something in them that has transferred to me, and, you know, but I was scared as shit, and it took 5 years. And basically what happened was, so my mum was my first parent that I told, and so 5 years, so like I said at the beginning briefly, I used to be a scientist. I used to do analyze DNA, I used to work in cytogenetics in pathology, just like testing for genetic abnormalities and stuff like that. And so I quit that. I had a 3.5 year overlap where all I wanted to do was strip, but I was too scared to quit my day job, purely for the fact that I could say, if anyone asks a scary question, what do you do? I'm a scientist. So 3.5 years, I worked 7 days a week. So I could work on the weekend. That's what lit me up. So I'd work, and then, you know, 40-hour Monday to Friday. And then Friday I'd work that night. Saturday I'd work that night. Sunday I'd be absolutely wrecked. And then I'd do it all again. And I did that for 3.5 years, just so I could live out my, my passion, basically. And so anyway, I eventually quit science and just said, oh, I work in a bar now. And it didn't make much sense to my parents. Like, why would you go to uni and just quit and work in a bar? And then I'm like, I don't know how to make a fucking cocktail. Like, my drink of choice is vodka. So it's pretty basic to just pour straight vodka into a shot cup. So, you know, my dad one time, after I told him, anyway, I'll get to that, but he tested me. No, before I told him, sorry, and I said I worked in this bar, and he must have like looked it up, and he said, how much is the mojito there? And I was like, I don't know, like $14, whatever. I made something up, and he just looked at me, and I was like, shit, I'm the worst liar. So I told my mum, and how that panned out, I was at Christmas with her sisters, like my aunties, and they're really straight. Like my mum's side is super duper straight. They're like all teachers, and, you know, lovely though. And I just started freaking out in my head. Like, I was sick of every year. So are you still in the bar now? And I hate lying. And I'm like, this is bullshit. And I sort of wigged out of my head, and it like escalated in my head. And then I pulled my mum aside in this panic. She probably thought, what the hell is she doing? And I said, Mum, I've got to tell you something. And she's like, what? And I said, I'm a stripper. And she goes, well, you'd be good at it. And I was like, oh, thanks. And she goes, are you safe? And I was like, yeah, it's safe. And I thought the first thing she'd ask always would be, are you safe? You know, my mum is such a lovely, caring person.
Wonderful.
But I love how the first thing she's like, well, you'd be good at it. And then she goes, don't tell Auntie Linda. Like, one of the aunties it's okay to tell, but don't tell the other one. And the other one, you know, I'm not sure if she knows now, probably. I actually don't care anymore. Telling my dad he's only contactable by email. He hates phones, and he's a bit of a difficult human. So I emailed him, and he was surprisingly supportive as well. He just replied, oh, well, it's a sign of the times, and this and that, and that's all I really remember. You know, it's a sign of the times. It, you know, it is whatever year it was then, and sweet, whatever. So yeah, it was very built up in my head. And now in retrospect, I think, you know, I mean, look, every family is different, but from my experience, yeah, you know, safety is generally the main concern. And then just realizing that, you know, we're all mirrors of each other. And if they have a problem, you know what, we can make the decision. Do we take on board what we're predicting people are going to say, and you know, react to those imaginary scenarios, or do we just bite the bullet, or, you know, perhaps you know your parents so well that it's just best not to. But I think you're from that gray zone of just self-panicking, like scenarios in your head. I think sometimes it can be a good idea and a real relief to be open with your family. And then also I found that my career really flourished after I said that, because there was an element of my own judgment, feeling like I was going to get judged, but I was actually judging myself. And actually I saw my income increase after coming out of the closet, and my confidence increase as well, consistently from there on. So yeah, I do encourage it, but then at the same time, if you know it's more safe and more beneficial not to, then definitely no. But that's how I came out anyway.
That's an incredible story. Thank you.
It was funny.
Thank you.
Awesome, Wendy. I have a very similar kind of story in that, like, my formal education is in respiratory therapy. Like, I'm a registered respiratory therapist, and very similar to yourself, I was bridging myself from that career doing things that I love, like sex work, and I also am like a movement coach. And one of the dilemmas I had when approaching my mother first was like, how am I going to tell my mother and my father that I'm giving up my formal education as a respiratory therapist for sex work and for teaching people how to move. And yeah, and like that, what you said as well, like that label, like I could say, hey, I'm a respiratory therapist. People like, oh, okay, yeah, you're probably a professional person. And then dealing with that, that, I guess, identity crisis, if you will. But coming back to the parent thing, I'm very fortunate and blessed. Like, my mom has given me the gift of unconditional love since I was brought into this world. And when I came to her and I was like, yeah, Mom, I'm gonna make pornography and on an independent basis and all this stuff. And she was just like, you know what, as long as you're happy, then I'm happy for you. And I think that's great. So, and like, I have a really good relationship with my brothers. Like, my half brother is 13 and he knows, and we have conversations about sex, and it's been like quite good from my experience. My dad, like, we're fairly close. He like left when I was very, very young. He was just kind of like, okay, well, I mean, as long as you're safe, you know. Didn't really have much to say about besides that. But yeah, I feel very blessed. Like, my mother is just like, she's like, I love you, just do what makes you happy, and as long as you're happy, then that's fabulous.
That's
I love
awesome.
the ways that just again breaks the stereotypes, like you two having these very professional careers that are such a safe space to be like, I am a scientist, I'm a respiratory therapist. Is that what it is? Sounds great. I have no clue what it is. But like, yeah, to go, I have this legit societally career, but I choose like to do this. It's not from a place of scarcity, because obviously that can happen with the adult industry of like, I'm going to start doing porn, I'm going to start stripping because I need the money and I don't know where else to go, or because I've had some kind of traumatic experience in my growing up and this is the only place I feel welcome, whatever it is. But to go, no, like, I am fucking good within myself, and this is coming from a place of passion and choice, and I'm totally okay with that. And also hearing like just everyone's story, it's, you hear about coming out for people like for queer in whatever place of the spectrum you are, or coming out as a new gender, is like, that's a whole process, but so is the adult and sex industry. And I love Wendy saying, like, again, it's, yes, like, liberate yourself and see where that changes things in your life, but also like, don't do it if you don't feel like it's going to be safe and it's not going to be beneficial to you. It is, any coming out process is like that across all areas, it seems. One that I want to return to now that we're a bit more in the thick of things is Sparks. I want to talk about this crossover between martial arts and BDSM with Shibari, and its traditional practice versus its modern practice, and what, if there's any stories that or any dogmas or any conflict, or if it's like all beautiful, what could you share about that bridge?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, Shibari started known as Hojo Jitsu, which is the martial art form of it, which is what the samurai used to practice with rope. And essentially, I asked my sensei about it. He's one of the, arguably, well, one of the best in the world, in my opinion, best in the world, biased, but that's it. And I asked him, like, look, where did it come from? Is there a pivotal, monumental moment where it was like, all right, this is now not a martial arts army type thing, and it's now a BDSM practice? And he just said, nah, would have just been some sexy samurai enjoyed tying his wife up, and then it's just kept going from there. Yeah, and he said, Japanese kinky people. That's pretty much what he said, Japanese kinky, and then it's from there. But like the whole cultural aspect in that of the Japanese people is heavily embedded into Shibari. Just like the level of respect and that kind of thing. Like it's something, it's so profound, the sort of spiritual connection. There's a couple of big connections that I really love, like in spirituality and energy and even chi and that kind of stuff, which a lot of the ties that we do, the style that I tie in, the natural energy of the body flows top to bottom, like left to right around the body. So a lot of our ties, we start and then we go around the body in that direction to flow with the energy of the body rather than right to left going against it. So it just feels more natural. There's things like respect to the model site, so the respect to the person that I'm tying. As I'm untying ropes and that kind of stuff, as I untie them, because they're each in 8 meter lengths and you fold it in half, so really 4 meter lengths. And as I untie each one and take off a rope, I give it a flick so it's just a bit further away so I'm not stepping on the rope as I'm untying, because we put so much love and energy into maintaining our rope to then put on our model's skin, whether it be male or female, doesn't matter, that I'm not going to disrespect the person and the future people that I'm tying with by stepping on my ropes with my feet. Like, even though during a scene it is BDSM and it is all kink, now I might have someone upside down with their face on the floor, standing on their face and doing all messed up kind of things to them. That's on purpose. Like, me putting my feet intentionally in their mouth or whatever is completely different to stepping on my ropes like I don't care. So there's that massive difference in it. But no, it's sort of pivotal moments. I think it just came through, kinky Japanese people, and then as the globe started to open up with stuff like printing, books and photography and that kind of stuff, then we saw it leak out a little bit as Japanese people would start to photograph it, or they'd use it in theatre and they'd start putting on shows with it. It leaked out a little bit, but then obviously just lately with the internet and that kind of stuff and the general openness of this cultural change that I'm kind of noticing a bit at the moment, with just even in the last few years with the general acceptance of everyone. It's Shibari's really starting to come out of the woodwork now. Like, we're seeing it everywhere online. We're even seeing it there's a dating show which one of their dates was they went to a retreat and they did an afternoon learning Shibari. It was what they did. I mean, it's just from pure exposure now, I think people are getting used to it and they're seeing it more as like the art form and the spiritual aspect that it can be, rather than just this thing that's a heavy BDSM practice.
Cool.
Yeah,
it is. It's such a fucking beautiful art. I'm curious, actually, something you touched on there a little bit. I want to dive a bit deeper and maybe hear if it's an existing thing in the community, is cultural appropriation. Is that a conversation that surrounds Shibari?
Yeah, absolutely. Shibari, it's something that attracts so many different aspects and walks of life. I mean, it's fantastic. We have people that walk into the studio, queer, transgender, non-binary, all that kind of thing. And from what even just me and my own personal growth, I would have like looked and been taken aback by 5-6 years ago. Now we have people walk into the studio and they're be the most eccentric, flamboyant, most shy, reserved, someone going through a sex change process, and you just don't even batter an eyelid. It's something that's fantastic within the acceptance of the rope community. People tying whoever, it doesn't matter what they are. It's almost like Shibari strips back that element of what you should be and what you should be in culture's eyes, and it takes it back to it's purely an interaction between two people. It doesn't matter what sex, race, gender, whatever they are. It's just the beauty of the interaction itself. It's not the people.
Beautiful. Speaking of, again, like trans, queer, non-binary people, I'm curious to hear, in your experience, Dex, were you out as pansexual at the beginning of your career? And like, what does that role mean to you to also be in this journey, not only bringing spirituality into your work, but also working as a pansexual man?
Yeah, it's so I did always like label myself as that since creating my social platforms or my alias, and just because it felt as though it was the truest way I could explain what felt authentic to me in my sexuality. Because when I was younger, like I always knew that I wasn't solely interested in women, but I knew that I didn't want to necessarily be with solely a man. But to that, it's interesting, like being open to, like, I would consider myself just a very sexual fluid human. But saying that, a lot of people are like, what does that mean? So there's this label of pansexuality that people seem to somewhat understand or like can compartmentalize. But in that, like my work and I guess assigning myself to this identity, I've grown into it more. Like recently I did one of my first bottoming performance with a man, and it was like the first time I actually felt like aroused by a man, like solely. Really enjoyed that experience, and so I feel like it's allowed me to expand and really experience the things that I've wanted to in regards to my sexuality. And but yeah, to answer your question, I've always assigned myself to that identity, and then it continues to evolve, which is really cool. Like I'm learning more about myself and my sexuality through the work.
What do you feel like, because in this industry for yourself, there's purpose in it, right? Like you've sat down and asked what you're going to do, why you're doing it, where you want to lead. Do you feel that there is specifically a leadership role when you tap into that pansexuality, like that you are a representative in that role, and that there might be some kind of places that you've got to speak out or stand up and, yeah, I guess be a leader in that area? I'm not getting that question across right. I guess, do you feel leadership in your pansexuality in the industry and obligation to stand up in certain areas of that label?
Yeah, and for me, I do, in a sense. Like for me, the way that comes out actionably is just speaking to, my openness and willingness to learn. Because I think a lot of people, we are all on this spectrum of sexuality. Like I guess it's perhaps a crude analogy, but I make the analogy of like the primary colors, like the three primary colors. There's way more colors that we can see than that, and they're vast and beautiful and amazing. And that's like sexuality. It's like there's not just like heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual. There's everything and anything in between. And it's hard to pinpoint. Like our brains as humans don't like that. We want to use the least amount of energy as possible to compartmentalize things. So my leadership role, I guess, to speak to that is to say, like, I'm not sure sometimes, but I'm willing to explore. Or like some people have asked me, like, will you ever talk? Right now, that's not something I desire, but I'm open to that changing. Just because like bottoming, it was something that like I'd always played with my abs. Like I knew it was something I enjoyed, but it took me years to actually want to receive it from another man. So I think I step up in a leader as sharing that story and that narrative with willingness, with vulnerability, with courage, and just knowing that like there's nothing wrong with knowing what you want now and maybe that changing later, if that answers the question.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's amazing. And I love, again, like how you say it's a spectrum, because that's something I play with as well. And I identify as sexually fluid, but if I had to be like a label among the spectrum that's more known, I would say pansexual. But I love the like what it does to your brain to think if you are doing sex work and you I guess like essentially topping with women, but you're like, yeah, but I don't want to do that with men. I actually want to be a bottom, is like at this current moment is like the cogs in the brain to be able to fully conceptualize that and be, you know, like, okay, cool, that's where he's at. Like that's actually something to integrate and go, oh, okay, like just because you penetrate women doesn't mean you have to penetrate men when you're with men. So I do love that.
Sure.
Do you find, I mean, both of you identifying as pansexual, a bit of interest of my own, do you find that kind of where you sit within that pansexuality and your feelings towards each gender, does that fluctuate more on like a day-to-day, week basis, month, or is it like over a couple of years you notice fluctuation, or can it be different, like in the moments, different in the people you're around, different? Does the environment and that kind of stuff that you're in affect how you feel internally?
You go first, Dex.
I think it's very context dependent, like, and to the energies, like we've all spoken about energies and embodying, you know, a divine masculine or a divine feminine in our work. And when I top a woman, or when I'm being in that position, I feel like I'm very much more in my masculine. And then when I'm receiving pleasure or with a man, I feel like I'm very much more in my feminine. That's just like what feels authentic to me. So in the context of like men, for example, I embody a much different energy. And it really depends. Like with men, I'm less attracted to their physicality and more attracted into what they bring energetically to me, how they converse with me, how those energy mixes. It's much more subtle. Whereas with like females, it's just like there's more of like a physical attraction. So that's where what I've learned thus far, but it can be very contextual. And if there's more than myself and another human, if there's many humans, that changes the dynamic as well. But I think it's like it's a representation of us as humans. Like we're always changing, and like Wendy said about environments, we are different people depending on the environments we're in. I really believe that our environment primes us to be a certain way. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah.
I'm quite similar to Dex. Like I'm attracted to, first and foremost, like energy. But like, yeah, my journey is consistently fluctuating and is fluid. Yes. At this current moment in my journey is like, I'm extremely physically attracted to men, like very attracted to men. And there's moments like where I'll be with a woman and like, I'm sort of in a journey because I've just been with women for so long in my life where I'm like, you know, I'm a bit annoyed that women are attractive at times. And then there's when their energy is like, I'm like, oh fuck, like I'm so attracted to her. It's sort of annoying because I'm trying to focus on men. Like I'm really attracted to men at this moment. And it's like, it's like something that's like bothering, you know, it's like I have to tolerate that I'm really attracted to this woman at this moment. So yeah, it's constantly like
It's a good,
sorry, what was that, Wendy?
it's a good problem to have, I guess.
That's a great problem to have.
Be
Like
attracted to both sides. What a shame.
yeah, like yeah, it
Banquet
is.
of deliciousness. Like.
Yeah, and it's constantly changing. Like there's moments where, like not too long ago, I was only sexually attracted to men, you know, and now it's more so like when I do think about sex, like when it's been a while, I do think about women more in that area, but physically and intimately, I want to be with a man. I want to have sex with a woman. I don't like it's if I overthink it, it gets really complicated and I do my head in, as you can probably see in this moment. But yeah, it's an odd journey, if I'm honest, and I just have to be really present. If I think about where I was like 2 days ago, I start to feel a bit broken in my mind, you know, because it's like fuck, it's just changing a lot.
I find that interesting. Like for me, you know, I'm straight, but like dabbled here and there. Like I'm more about fun and the experience and that kind of thing. But I'm just really interested with what you just said. Like, I guess the confusion, say, like you said, like if it's been a while and then you want this, but then you want that. And then for me, like I say when I like self-pleasure, and I don't watch porn actually personally, but I like to think about different scenarios in my head. So I just find like with what you were saying, I just thought, man, that must be so hard. I don't know, like if you think about scenarios yourself, but like to pinpoint like, what am I picturing here, like, and then how to navigate that confusion. I just find that really
because that's my ultimate goal, is like, it doesn't matter if it's a man, woman, non-binary, trans, anything like that. It's like, what is our energy exchange and where are we fluctuating upon that in our intimacy? That's what I want, but obviously I'm a lustful primal human as well. So I really love body features on all spectrums of humans just currently at this moment, because it's less explored, and I've had less permission previously within myself to find men attractive. Is just that I'm like all out, like, wow, like look at his jaw, wow, look at that muscle in his bicep, wow, look at whatever it is. Like I'm because I've checked out, a lot of fucking women, but there's still those times where I'm like, oh fuck, she's so good looking, and I thought I was done in that area for the moment, but I'm not. So yeah, but energy is what I desire the most.
So nuanced. I like what you said, Paisley, because it's almost like an atrophied muscle in a sense, like being attracted or allured to energy. I'm still myself personally like navigating the waters of understanding it, but it's almost, perhaps you've all experienced this as well, where you see someone and you don't really think much of them, but then you get to know them, you connect with them, and all of a sudden there's like, you see them in this new light. And like for me, that was the first taste. I was like, whoa, like the way someone appeals to me can change when I connect with them. And that's something that like intuitively, like a muscle, it's something I try to exercise. It's like, what, like you said, what energetic exchange, like what is being not on the with our senses, like our visual senses or five senses, what's being transferred here, and trying to tap into that and just believe that is something that I can work and evolve and grow in this like sexual practice.
Yeah, well, sorry, go Shane.
So there's probably something similar to that, I guess, is when like within rope and that kind of thing, because it is all heavily energy transference and that kind of stuff. You can be tying someone who's not attracted to men at all. You can be tying someone who's been a lesbian their entire life and doesn't like men, and just because of the energy, it doesn't matter what you are behind the ropes, but they find themselves incredibly turned on and that kind of stuff. And it's not actually a physical. It's not a physical attraction. It's all to do with mental, which I think when you're talking about the mental aspect and mental attraction of things, I don't really believe that sex or even looks for that matter has any sort of thing to do with that, which is where I guess the rope helps that uncovering and just letting go of everything. So you can have people that can come in and just enjoy the rope experience and enjoy the feeling of the rope, the energy, and themselves, but they're not actually enjoying or feeling that guilty pleasure of enjoying a different person, if that kind of makes sense, because they're coming in. You have some people who get incredibly sexually aroused and really turned on to the point where, you can make someone orgasm when you haven't even taken off their pants or any clothes whatsoever. You can just be putting ropes around their arms and you can make someone orgasm if you can get the energy and the mental aspect and play right. And people feel okay doing that and letting go in a safe and trusting environment because they're not actually enjoying the physical fruits of someone else. It's all in their own head. So it's their own head. The external feelings of the ropes and their experience has allowed them to create that sensuality and that experience and that for themselves.
Yeah. So it happens I do believe it also happens physically somehow. Like I know if someone, like in my experience of watching someone go on a personal development journey, I feel like after they've done it, like say if they go on this retreat or whatever, they just come out like physically hotter. And I do it with myself. Like if I go to a retreat or something like that, I'll take a selfie beforehand and then a selfie at the end, if say if it goes for 2 weeks. And sometimes like before sex, I'll take a photo of myself, and after sex, I'll take a photo. And like, because of I've had that energy exchange, and because I've been in like bliss of orgasm, just something changes in my, because of our faces are so elastic. You see a dead person, their face, they look so different because they're holding different ways. Their expression is changed. But when you're energetically high, you become more physically attractive because your expression does translate through your body. I believe. And, you know, I assume, you know, for instance, like Wendy, you're saying how you dress a bit tomboy when you're not at work, but like it's when you're stripping, I'm sure you're fucking just making people melt to a million pieces, but then you're not really putting any of that energy out when you're on your day-to-day life. So maybe you could walk past like 20 men that you've seen the night before, and they maybe not even recognize you because you're not actually putting energy out.
Yeah, potentially. I feel like there's two sides to that. Sometimes I feel like it depends how I'm feeling inside as well. And I just find that so interesting that you said, you know, after a retreat that you can look different. It just had me thinking like, you know, yeah, I do dress down. Yeah, I do want to be a face in the crowd. But there's this really interesting book that I love called Smile at Fear, and it's written by a monk. And there's this section in it where it takes you on a journey around like, yeah, it's about facing fears and then the confidence that you get after that. And then beyond confidence, there's this state that this monk writes about called wind horse. And wind horse is like this ultimate calm, confident state. And they even write about like, you don't need to dress fancy. You can just wear, you know, whatever, the most plain clothes or 10-year-old clothes, whatever, but still exude this something. And I agree with you. Like, I think when people let go of a lot of like stress or angst from their life and things like that, that, you know, they do look different. And so I guess sometimes I feel like through my journey as a stripper and learning and my personal development journey as well, like both combined, I actually, even if I do wear something that I've owned for 10 years and I don't actually give a shit, like I still feel like I look good in a sense. It's funny because I've let go of so much and I've done so much work on feeling confident, plus the stripping helps me to feel, you know, like I've learned a lot of confidence through that. And it's funny, so there's this flip side of like not wanting to dress up to maybe fly under the radar, but also not feeling like I need to as well. Like it,
what I'm saying, like for instance, you could turn that energy on in just your Nike tracksuit, right? You could rock up to the strip club and still dominate in that clothes. Yes, of course, wearing certain outfits does work because of the set and setting is that's what you do. But I've had fucking strip dancers from someone wearing really baggy, daggy clothes, and I'm still like this, you know, like really fucking, it doesn't matter what they're wearing. It's the energy that they're giving me in that moment, right? But, you know, in your day-to-day life, you're not walking down to the beach and running stripper energy, are you? Regardless of what you're wearing.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. Sometimes, and again, like it depends how I feel. Sometimes I feel like I am.
Oh, cool.
And sometimes I feel like I'm not. And I don't feel like I've got control of that. I feel like I just might wake up in the morning and either really feel that or not. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you think, Wendy, that a couple of things there, when you said like you quite often dress down throughout the day and wear your trackies and that kind of stuff every time, do you think that's partly because you get so much validation and that from people when you're working that you don't need to dress up to impress everyone outside of work because you have a room full of people ogling over you the whole night, so you don't need that validation?
Yeah, so I've explored into this with my site because I've seen it for so many years and whatever, and I think there's a bit of that. Like my cup is a bit full. Like I feel like, you know, I really don't care for external validation. maybe a little bit in the club still, but definitely at the start of my journey, I did care a huge amount, and that helped to propel me to do well I needed external validation exceedingly. And so, but I think it's a combination of, yeah, my cup's pretty full now, and you know, I don't necessarily crave it like I used to. It used to be a need, now it's kind of like a nice thing. But also growing up, my mum dresses down, not to say I fully dress down, I don't wear like track pants a lot, but just maybe extremely simple, plain clothes. But growing up in my family, you know, like I said at the start, I have 4 brothers and no sisters. And my dad, I think, has a very love-hate relationship with women. And he would often make comment, I just didn't feel safe feeling feminine around him, because he's got his own traumas from his own life around women. And I think strong femininity really triggers my dad. So it was safer to dress really plain and be a tomboy. And so that's just my own personal experience. You know, and somehow, like, yes, stripping can fit in as like a piece of that puzzle, but I know from doing my own like self-inquiries, it did come from, yeah, feeling safe in the home, and my dad getting triggered by, like, you know, fucking women, and saying quite derogatory things like when he's triggered by women. And so just really, again, wanting to fly under that radar and be like, hey, I'm one of the boys, you know, don't get pissed off. Yeah, so yeah, there's different elements. It's always really complex, you know. So I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, for sure.
One thing, sorry, I'm kind of got overrun for a little second here.
Okay.
I do have a question for Dex on that. You mentioned about trauma and people with trauma and that kind of stuff, and past things that have happened. And there's one thing that I experience a lot with rope, and that is that it is sought after by a lot of people who have had trauma and that find this comfort and this empowerment within it. And I guess, Dex, my question like for you, do you have people that have come to you with problems or past traumas, or you can tell what we call like damaged people or whatever, or the people who have gone through some horrible stuff in life? Do you find some of them find you, and like, how do you help with that kind of situation? And does your stuff generally, like, obviously you put it out there to generally try and help people, yeah, so how do you deal with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, great question. Every so often some people will reach out, you know. I've had people reach out with their own personal problems, or asking for their partners or assistance, and, you know, they want their partner to be more open, or themselves. But most of the time, it's like, I find, like, in other work, I do coach people through movement, and I see my role as a coach to it's not necessarily what I know, it's asking good questions and giving people the space to work through their own problems and come to their own solutions. So in that situation, I try to ask the best of questions to really understand what it is that the person is dealing with. You know, exchange some of my own vulnerability, like expressing that, you know, what they're feeling is okay. I think we all feel shame at some point towards our sexuality, and then from that, if I feel there's solutions that might be applicable, maybe I'll bring them forth. But I try my best actually not to even offer so many solutions, but rather ask them what they think might be best for themselves, so that it's more of an empowering experience for them. Because like, I work with a coach as well, and that's one of the things I've learned, or that's been most impactful for me, is he, you know, makes me do the work in the sense of, like, what is the solution for me? Because I don't think we can really help people, or we can't, like, heal people. That is the work that we have to do individually, you know, like, so from my experience, that's kind of where it is, being a compassionate witness, and having an opportunity to just, like, connect with another human and see them, and, you know, maybe give them the opportunity to see, like, or share their story, so that they don't feel as though they're, like, you know, in this dark place where no one understands them. I kind of have the same question for you, because I'm really, like, I've never experienced Shibari, but, like, I know it can be such a vulnerable space, or I've heard, you know, some horror stories and this and that of having, like, bad experiences, but like being a leader in that space, how do you set up safety, or like what is your code for communication, and what's your experience with people coming to you being like, I've had this rough experience, or how do you address those things?
Yeah, it is such a delicate topic, and it's something that people run workshops, like our workshops and presentations and that kind of stuff on. That general consent is such a massive issue within everything that we do day to day, but more so because when you're in rope and you are vulnerable in that, you are in such a vulnerable state, not only mentally but physically as well, so it just makes it even worse. One of the things that I do personally, like when I'm tying with something new, I've actually written out a checklist of stuff to go through, just all these conversation topics, and then even down to a checklist of literally, are you okay with things like hair rope, neck rope, being choked, bruising, that kind of stuff? Because a lot of people come to me or come to people, and the few people that I'm really close to in the scene, and that one of the biggest red flags is when someone comes, I'm like, all right, so you obviously know what rope is. You wouldn't have asked me to tie if you didn't know what rope is, or didn't like the look of it. Have you put a thought into what are you okay with? And if someone says, oh, I'm fine with everything, you can go for it. It's like, that is the biggest red flag and the biggest nut. Okay, now our consent conversation's gone from probably a 10, 15, 20-minute conversation to now we're going to talk for an hour, and I'm going to go through scenarios and go through this, because for someone to say you can do absolutely anything, like your anything might be completely different to Wendy's anything, and I can guarantee you your anything is very different to my anything and stuff that I've actually seen at hardcore BDSM parties. Like when I was going into it, I had no idea what some of this stuff could consist of. Like, for example, people being tied up. I mean, I had one girl a couple of years ago tied up in her side, legs spread open, fucking her with a Red Bull can, and then I opened the Red Bull can and used her as a lever to pour drinks to people, like out on stage. I've seen people with hands and stuff nailed to tables, and then like fingernails and stuff pulled off just in the name of play. Like, so when someone says do anything to me, what is anything? Like, and I've had that very same thing where someone said you can do anything to me. I said, okay, well, what about hair rope? Can I do a hair tie? And oh, no hair ties. I'm not into my hair being pulled. And it was like, so when she said you can do anything, she instantly didn't think that anything could be choking. Like, but it's all stuff that comes into it. So yeah, I guess one of the things that I do is I have that checklist, and it's actually a 3-4 page written out thing that we go through. Questions like, what are you after with this experience? Where have you seen it before, and how familiar are you with it? Injuries and that kind of stuff that you need to know about. And then I'll do a little basic checklist, particularly with new people. Only keep it very simple, keep the rope very simple. And I guess you talk through what you're going to do beforehand and never deviating from that. And one of the biggest problems is if you say to someone, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then halfway through you go, oh, we'll just change it and do something a bit differently. That's where the big issue lies. And I guess setting up the space before you tie to say, please, if you at all throughout anything feel uncomfortable, let me know straight away. Because the last thing any of us ever want is to make someone else feel uncomfortable and have a bad experience. So to me, if someone's sitting there going, I don't really like this, but I'll push through it because it's what they seem to do, it's like, that's horrible. I don't want to create that experience for someone. So always like just setting up that thing where if anything feels uncomfortable or whatever, like that I've unintentionally done, or you don't like how something's going, or you felt a little bit different to how you thought you would feel, and you're not okay with what you thought you would be, sing out straight away, because I won't take it to heart. Like, I like the fact that you can say, can we not do this? I'm not as okay with it as what I thought. That is good. And that is a fantastic thing. And I mean, yeah, just setting up that space and the comfortability to say it's not okay, to talk out, is, I think, so important with what we do.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, that's like a big lesson, especially in boundaries. Like this is a big thing a lot of people struggle with, and that just sounds like a workshop on boundaries, essentially. You know,
There are so many workshops on that consent, communication, the boundaries, setting it all up. You can do days and days, and I mean the rabbit hole just gets bigger and deeper. I mean, the best we can really do is just constantly try and improve and learn and that kind of stuff, and continue to grow as we go on.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought up the like, oh yeah, I'm open to anything, you know, because, you know, one thing I do before I sleep with anyone is I run this thing called RBDSM, which is relationship, boundaries, desires, sexual health, and meaning, like what this will mean to you. And whenever it gets to boundaries, it's like, oh, I have no boundaries. It's like, don't do, like, I'm not attracted to you anymore because that's bullshit. Because it's like instantly, it's like, cool, can I twist your nipple? And it's like, oh, no, don't do that. Can I pull your chest hairs? No, don't do that. Like, can I put this in your pussy? No. It's like, well, like, this is not going to be a drop-in experience that I thought this was going to be. So maybe we shouldn't do this, you know, because it also there, because it just is like, oh, if you can't be honest about what your boundaries are or what you desire, like when it comes to sexual health, like I feel vulnerable now, because if you can't tell the truth about those things, can you tell the truth about your sexual health?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, more so with like sex work industry and that, and in the BDSM, if someone's not open to telling you what they are and aren't actually okay with, that puts you as a top or in as a bottom or whatever at such a high vulnerable place. Because, you know, someone might say, oh, yeah, I'm okay with that. And then they're not, but it's a problem, and like it becomes a massive problem later. And one of the things more importantly is also, as someone in my position who's like teaching people or doing these things for people and is really in control, because you've got such a vulnerable place, and I'm completely in control of the whole scene, essentially, you need to be able to learn to even pick up subtle like changes of breathing. When I'm checking in someone who's suspended and I go, hey, how are you? Someone says, okay. You need to be able to pick up the difference in how they said okay. Just because they said the word okay doesn't mean that they are. It could mean that they think they're okay, yet they're about on the verge of passing out and you need to do something about it. Or they're really struggling mentally and you need to ease the playback a bit because it's a bit heavy. Or like they genuinely are okay and they're loving it, so go for it. There's so many different, even just how you answer, not only the words you say, but you know, how their skin feels, how they're breathing, where they're looking, how are they holding their mouth. Do they shiver when you touch them there? When you pull a leg open, does their face turn away in disgust, or do they like feel relief and their chest will open up because they're like, they feel empowered and that kind of stuff, and they're letting go and enjoying it. And so many different things with that.
I'd love to ask something on that. I mean, you know, there's a lot of topics here like the trust, but essentially what you're just talking about right now is reading people's body language. That's something that really interests me with my customers, but for different reasons. Did you learn all of the things you just mentioned, plus obviously more, only through experience?
A lot of it is experience. I'm very fortunate. I've learned under I've done workshops and classes with quite a number of very good people who've been doing it for a lot of years, like, 20, 30 sort of years. And yeah, it's something that I can't stress enough how much value you get out of one-to-one tuition and classes with actual people hand in hand. Like, this is what happens when you do this, and you can actually show it. You can set up a scene. So like one of the things that really sticks in my mind is I was learning from this rigger, and he was saying, when you're doing play, it was all on the floor, and he's like, you wrap your arm around here to put intent into the vagina, into genitals, into the penis, and then you lift the leg up. It brings their focus into their genitals, and then when you're lifting the leg up, sort of exposing the genitals, 9 out of 10 people, their face instantly turns away and goes to the ground. They try and hide their face, because they're used to the social norms of, if your genitals are being exposed, cover up, because we try and cover up our genitals. It's not a nice thing to have out to see. Whereas you play with that reading body language. And one thing you read that, if you want to do more of a humiliation play, if people are okay with that, is when you do that, grab them by the hair so they can't expose themselves, so they're on show fully. Therefore, you're playing with their brain. It's a lot of it is, and then so much of it is just as you read, you have an experience and that kind of stuff, and you check in, and someone goes, "Oh, actually, this is a bit much for me," and you're like, I could have seen that, because all of a sudden you've got really warm and your skin's changed and your breathing's picked up a lot like that. So it does come from experience and a lot of specifically learning about it.
Wow.
I guess.
I love that. Makes that side really fascinates me. There's the psychological link, with just reading people, and like you said, the reactions, that demonstrating where they are mentally through their physical, that for some reason absolutely fascinates me.
Essentially what we're doing, essentially what all of us are doing, you with your stripping work, and you're playing with the people's heads who are paying you, you're dancing to get into their head to create an experience and get money. And Dex, with you as well, you're teaching how people to use their body to accept it, so they can learn and grow in that within their mind and that kind of stuff. I'm doing the same. I use rope to play and affect how someone feels in their head.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a very direct mind-body connection, and being able to access through the physical. I love that. I just find it so fascinating.
That is what's hot to me. That's what.
Yeah. It is hot. It's so powerful too. It's such a powerful, such a responsibility that all of us really have. You gotta, it's an amazing thing, but it's an amazing thing. It's a scary thing. It's a powerful thing, and it's something that we need to be careful and responsible with at the same time, I guess.
There's such a fine line between empowerment and kind of the word that came to mind is damaging, but potentially traumatizing or upsetting, whatever, but between empowerment and having the opposite effect on someone, definitely. I
think the biggest difference in there is intention. When you've got the power, it's your intent that you do with it is the difference between who you are, I guess.
Yeah.
Fuck yes. Yeah. And that to me is going back to the question you asked earlier about who you're attracted to, these kinds of conversations and the intention and the way that it's communicated, that is the porn. In any kind of situation, whether there is any sex or not, you can put any color person, any size, shape, body, any gender on the screen, and you play out these scenarios for me with that mind-body connection, with intention, with expression. I will be turned on. It doesn't matter what you physically look like. I am into it. That's me personally. That's the fluidity there. That's what I'm turned on by, and that's a big part of what I want to be visible in here. Whenever you two, you three, are just asking each other questions and explaining the truth that's behind the veil of what's on the surface of sex work, of the adult industry. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. And I love that you're all asking these questions of one another. But I'm also being time conscious, because I know right now it's almost 11:30 p.m. for Dex. And I really appreciate you championing on to this hour. Because I know you'd normally log off pretty early. So I do feel to wrap up. But does anyone have anything that they want to plug in this moment shamelessly and say, check out this or that? Because I would really love for people to come check you out. I will put your Instagrams, websites, etc. With this when it's released. But if there's anything additionally you would love to plug or just share as a human at the end of this, I would really love to give you that platform in this moment.
Anyone like to go first?
No, you.
Go for it, Dex.
Sure. I Mr. Dex Parker is where you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, like Mr. Dex Parker. And then OnlyFans is mostly where I'm creating like independent content, like onlyfans.com//Mr. Dex Parker. But where I'm putting a lot of my efforts in right now is my own website, where I will like create more of my own independent content. But the greater vision is actually to create community for sex workers and give them a place to connect, speak, and hopefully create traffic towards what is like what Facebook and Instagram are doing right now and making it very hard for sex workers to promote, connect, and have a market. So my aim is to have my website, part of it is be a place for sex workers to connect, collaborate, and promote themselves. So hopefully having like a lot of traffic coming through and then, you know, sharing that abundance. So that is to come eventually would be probably mrdexparker.ca.
Wonderful. Everyone get behind that. If that's what you're feeling and that's what you want to get behind, reach out to Dex and give that support.
Cool. For me, I'll just jump in. My handle on Instagram is generally where I operate from is Stripology, Stripology. I guess sort of paying tribute to my science roots. Ology means the study of, so it's Stripology_study of the hustle. And that is a combination of tips. It's aimed for strippers mainly, but everything sort of is interrelatable to other areas of life. So I basically document like, you know, sales tips, like better ways to make money as a stripper, to support the community in that aspect, but also to support the community in other ways, like I said, journeying down the self-development path. So learning about connection to self, confidence, and being more self-aware, and in that sense, being able to create containers for your customers. So yeah, it kind of overflows into each other of like, the 3 pillars would basically be like actionable strategies, and then confidence, and then increasing your income as well. There's tons of information. I've got meditations on there. I've got, yeah, just heaps of free stuff if anyone's interested in that kind of thing and the world of stripping. So yeah.
And don't you have a free course coming out and then something else after that?
I forgot, yeah. So I also run workshops, and then I'm also doing online courses. So I have a free course coming up. I need to set a date yet because Christmas is coming up. I know in my industry, like it gets really crazy. It's silly season. So I'm planning on having it mid-December. So it will be on my Instagram if you're interested. And that covers everything: sales, upgrades, and extensions. So again, looking at the mind, the psychological components of what our customers might be after. I like to get pretty deep. But yeah, just basically maximizing your experience as a stripper. And yeah, and then that's leading into my upcoming course, which is going to be called Power of Suggestion. So that's sort of like implementing like the fundamentals of hypnosis. Obviously, we can't get anyone to do things that they don't want to do, but sort of like, yeah, looking at ways that we can implement, you know, the fundamentals of hypnosis, and the ways that we can use sort of sales techniques and advertising techniques and marketing techniques with our customers, but always in a consensual way. I always aim for a win-win situation. I love, like we said before, there's a fine line between, you know, giving someone a great experience and then a not so great experience. And I really aim to spread the ripples in the industry of giving our customers a fantastic experience, but also in a way that keeps the women empowered and making the money that they, I believe, truly deserve, because it is hard work. And
fuck yes.
Round circle, yeah.
Cool.
So that's what's coming up, and that course is going to drop in January.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Same as plug. Yeah, Instagram's the Parker Rope. Shibari Adelaide, that's the studio one. I teach there with a fantastic crew. There you can find us all through the Shibari Adelaide Instagram or Facebook page. And if you're not in Adelaide, a lot of you aren't, feel free to flick me a message. And if I know of rope places near you or can recommend anyone to get in touch with, then definitely happy to do so. And for those who don't or want to learn online, don't have access to that kind of stuff, yeah, happy to teach online too. So flick us a message if anyone's interested, and happy to help you out if I can.
Yes, I love the ability for people to work with all of you.
I'll be doing that.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and I hope I've got a lot out of this. Like, I'm feeling excited. I'm about to go out to some art party tonight, and I'm like just turned on for life. Like, I'm running a lot of eros in the manner of just life force is running through me from just hearing your journeys and yeah, the mind body connection and the feelings, consent, boundaries, and yeah, just how much that even within myself, it's dissolved more of the stigma within the sex industry and just sexual expression. So yeah, I really appreciate the three of you for giving me your time and giving the audience your time and sharing your knowledge and journey.
Thanks for asking me to come on. Thanks for having it. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah. And nice to meet all of you as well.
Yeah, likewise.
Really interesting.
Yeah, pleasure. I'll be slipping into all your DMs. Well, Paisley, that's what
Yeah.
She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called
Curious.
Curious.
Conversation.
Nowadays, there